Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. So today I am bringing you the top blunders of the Gashimov Memorial, also known as the Shamkir chess tournament. I know it has been a week or two since the end of the tournament, but unfortunately I only have time over the weekend to analyze and go through all the games to find the top blunders that the best of the best actually make in their games. I very much like that you enjoyed my first coverage of the Top Blunder series, let's call it like that. So I just decided to continue with it. So here it is, the top blunders of the Gashimov Memorial. In number 5, we actually have the long overdue Twitter war being projected to the chessboard, which is always good, between the Anish Giri with the white pieces and Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces. Here, world champion with the black pieces is very eager to win a game against Anish Giri, and as you all know, he did win the game. So I decided to look into this game and trying to find the turning point where actually Giri went wrong. And I think it is this move because essentially here Giri has still a lot of chances to actually draw the game. He is worse, both positionally and considering the material on the board, having him being a pawn down. A more major pressing concern, I would say, is the openness of his king, because the king on h1 is much more open than Carlsen's king on h8. And here you need to find the best move how to continue the game. Here Giri played rook to h3, which essentially allowed Carlsen to exploit the openness of Giri's king by playing queen to d5 check, king to g1 and queen to e4. Now the biggest threat is queen to e1 check, followed by rook checks, queen checks, and essentially winning some material. So if queen to e1 is allowed, king to g2, knight to f4 picks up the rook. So this is just one of the threats. So queen to b4 is played, stopping queen to e1, but after rook to f6, Giri did resign the game. The reason is there aren't any checkmate threats anymore, but Carlsen is threatening to capture on d4, put the knight on f4, and then just continue with a very good attack. So especially knight to f4 is a big threat, jumping to e2, also attacking the rook. So many threats that Giri cannot hold, so he resigned the game. But what did he need to play in actually to continue with this game? Here, maybe not the most natural move is a rook to f3. And this move comes as a counter, let's say a counter attack. Not just, so Carlsen isn't just threatening to play queen to d5, he is also threatening to capture on d4. And in order to stop that, you need to make some counterplay. So now with rook to f3, you're not just attacking the rook, you're also threatening to jump on f7 with the knight, give a check, and fork the king and the rook, the queen. So yeah, of course Carlsen needs to respond, and the best move is to capture on f3. And after knight to f3, you can see that now two pieces are actually defending this pawn. So all in all, yeah, it's looking good. A major thing could occur that you would go in the endgame with queens, which is definitely a very, very hard game to play. Okay, of course, we know that Carlsen likes to play his endgames until the 80th move, until he physically and mentally breaks his opponents. But yeah, Giri is the king of draws, and I very much think that he wouldn't mind playing this game for a very long time, especially against Magnus Carlsen. One other variation I wanted to show you. So this is just as simple as that. I mean, the game isn't over yet, so queen to d5 is, for example, a threat, but then king to g2 just defending the knight. There are a lot of threats, but nothing that drastic that can happen that Carlsen can actually play. Other than rook to f3, queen to d5 can be played, pinning the rook, but now queen to b3 actually holds everything. So you're attacking the queen, and also at the same time you're defending the rook. But after, for example, rook to f3, you have queen to d5, and I wanted to show you this variation because it's very interesting because of this. Rook to f1 check, king to g2, and knight to f4. Now forking the king and the queen. King captures on f1, knight captures on d5. And in the end, still Carlsen has that pawn in the knight's endgame, but once again, it is not that easy to win this. It is a double pawn, and there is still a lot of moves to be played. So this is what Giri essentially needed to play. In number 4, we have a situation in a game between Ding Liren and Radoslav Wojtaszek. So here, as you can see, white is in a better position, and the main reason is that this bishop is pinned. And with winning of the piece, definitely in this endgame, white wouldn't have any trouble. But just in time, he captures on e4. And now here you have to find that one move that actually brings you the victory. In the game, Ding Liren played king to e3, and the game continued with queen to d8, giving up a piece. And at this point, doesn't really matter what you do. Do you capture with the queen or with the bishop? I will show both variations. So Liren played bishop captures on b7, and Wojtaszek just went on to give a lot of checks in these positions, just giving up also the pawns. But it doesn't matter because the queen is in the corner. The bishop cannot really defend. And in a sense, after a couple of moves, I'll just go through all of them quickly. So a lot of checks, not allowing the bishop to come and defend. In that way, let's say, bring out the queen in some variations. Yeah, they agreed for a draw in this position. But if we go back to that position which occurred, so let me just quickly come here. The same thing would happen if queen captures on b7. So once again, queen to g5, but this comes with a twist. So probably why Liren didn't play queen to b7 but bishop to b7, because after king to e4 there is this queen to f4 checkmate. So definitely don't go for that. And if you go back, then you just continue with the checks. Do you give it on g4 or g2? It doesn't really matter. And now if you come king to e3, then you would get into worse position, but still you're not losing because you have the piece. So something like this. But also you don't have to do it like this. You can play something like king to d1, go on the other side. But in a sense, you cannot get rid of all these checks because, once again, neither the queen or the bishop can come into your help. So in this position, you cannot capture with the bishop because bishop captures with check, and then you even lose the game. If you capture with the pawn, once again, queen to c8 is now, so you come on the light square so that you can give a check. Once again, if you capture with the bishop or with the queen, let's say with the queen, here black will just give checks below this line, and king cannot come over, and there aren't any help of his pieces. But now going through all of this, so in this position here, after this capture, the move that actually wins the game, that Ding Liren kind of just missed, is king to e2. Kind of looks silly at first, but essentially it is a move that wins the game. And the main reason is that now white is just in time to actually go behind the pawns and go for the win. So if queen is played to c8, queen captures on b7, queen to g4, and now king to d2 and king to c3 actually stop the checks. Because after a check, for example, here on f4, you go king to c2 and queen to f2, king to b3, and there are no more checks. Or in this situation, if you go queen to g2, then immediately king to c3 doesn't allow any more checks. And that is the main point. If you don't go with the queen immediately, if you, for example, after this capture the pawn, king captures on d3, and once again queen to c8, but now queen to b7, and now after some checks, for example here, and king goes, I don't know, to c3, queen to h3, there is this bishop to f3, and that is the main idea. So if the pawn moves, queen captures on b7, and now with the coordination of the queen and the bishop can block, and in the end white will win the game. In number 3, we have a situation from the game Anish Giri and David Navara. And Giri is with white pieces here. He played a very boring opening, and of course everybody expected that it will be a draw, but for some reason in this position Navara plays bishop to c2, just giving up a piece. And Giri shows very quickly with b6, so the queen is attacked, and after bishop to d1, pawn captures on c7, threatening to go to a queen, so king to d7 and bishop to d1, king to c7, that Navara just lost a piece, and in the next two moves, rook to b1, Navara just resigns the game. So this is what happened in the game after bishop was played on c2. I was really amazed about how Navara did manage to play such a move, but actually one of the first moves that actually occurred to you when your opponent plays b5, so he attacks your knight, is that you have to move the knight, and you try to find the best place for that knight. And actually the best place is to play on a5, so on the edge of the board, but only temporarily, because maybe Navara was afraid that this bishop has some good discovery, but essentially it doesn't, Probably the best one is to play on d6, but after that queen to b6 gives a check, and you essentially have to play bishop back to c5. If you cover, then knight to c4, and it holds everything. The same thing would occur even if you don't move the bishop. Knight to c4 at some point will be a threat, and having the rook here, going to castle when this bishop moves, yeah, this is just a normal playable game for Navarra. And in number 2, once again we have a very strange situation coming from the game between Ding Liren and Rauf Mamedov. So in this situation, which occurred in the game, Liren gave a check on a7, and now Mamedov needs to play the king on f6 and just continue with the game. But for some reason he plays king to h6, which brings out a whole array of different possibilities here for Ding Liren, one of which the main is threats of checkmate. So the king went onto the edge of the board, and definitely in the situations like this, especially in the endgame where you have 2 rooks. If there was only 1 rook, then okay, but having 2 rooks and also on the 7th and 8th rank, it is very strange and very dangerous to go on the edge of the board. It would make sense if there was a pawn on h7, then you would have a blockade, let's say, behind them, and it would be fine probably. But now in this situation, Ding Liren shows very easily how to win this game. So he plays first king to g3, attacking the rook. And now wherever the rook plays, for example, most natural thing that occurs right away is to capture on f2. But after that you have rook gives a check, king to g5, h4, king goes to f5 or f6. In the end, rook check, king moves, and you pick up the rook. Easy as that. So you need to find this king to g3 move, and after that everything makes sense. In the game, Mamedov played rook to f6, but this essentially doesn't stop anything because Ding Liren doesn't have to play rook to h8 right away. He can play h4 first, so stopping the king going out this way. And after that, g5 was played, rook to h8 check, king to g6, rook to g8, king to f5 going out of the way. Rook captures here, and king to I think that in this position even Mamedov resigned the game, because after king to e6, rook to e5, the only move is king to d6, and now after this check, king goes to d7, for example, and you once again lose a rook. So just giving a lot of checks, and in the end you will lose the game. So this is what happened, and as I said at the beginning of this section, that after king to h6, that after this check, the better move was to play king to f6. Just quickly going through it, now rook to f8 doesn't win the rook because you have king to g5, of course, and after h4 you have king to g4, so no worries there. And if you don't give a for example check right away, if you go king to g3, then you have then for example you can even give a check first, king to g4, rook captures here, rook to f8, and king can go to e6, so no worries there. You can even capture right away, and sorry, you cannot capture right away because of course it is the same idea of the rook check, king goes to e6, and you lose the rook once again. So in a sense, first you give a check so that the king moves to g4, for example. If he moves here, then this is of course with a check, but if he moves to g4, then you can pick it up, and this check doesn't make sense. I mean, it makes sense, but it doesn't bring you any advantage. So this is a fairly easy drawish game, and Liren would probably agree for a draw in this position. And in first place, we have a situation from the game between Anish Giri and Ding Liren. So most of the people hoped they will draw the game. They did draw the game, but actually throughout the game there were a lot of chances. So, but mainly on the side of Ding Liren, and actually the two people that have been featured in all the top blunders in this video are actually Ding Liren and Anish Giri, which is very amazing because you expect from the people who make the most draws nowadays among the top players in the world that they would actually play like all the moves, like not the best moves, but all the drawing moves. But essentially here I would say more on Ding Liren's side, he plays a very good chess, but he still needs that conversion rate. And he still falls to it even in this game here, because after king to e4 he played king to c5. And I will quickly show you, okay, what will happen essentially here. With king to c5 he essentially gives up all hope for winning this game. Giri continues king to e5, we have king to c6 and now f5. After this, bishop to b4, so keeping the bishop on this diagonal, king to e6 and bishop to a3. I think after f6 that they draw the game or the move before, and the reason is, if I just quickly play the best moves, is a5, king to f7, king to d7, king to g8, and now king to c6 actually back, because it doesn't make sense to play it on e8. f7 will come either way. So f7 is played, and now after king to b5 you don't play f8 to queen, because then you lose the game. Yeah, the bishop will be sacrificed, and king to b4, a3, and he will easily pick up these pawns and push the pawn to a promotion. You play king to g7, and now you come closer with your king. You have to move the bishop, and the best square is probably to e7, because then you don't allow king to come to f6. King has to go to g6, king to b4, and now just quickly show you this variation. King first to e6, earn that valuable tempo, bishop goes to f8, king to d5, pick up this pawn and go and defend the pawn on b3. Now black, unfortunately for him, cannot stop king to b5 and picking up this pawn, because, for example, if he plays bishop to b4, we have king to b5. You can, for example, pick up the pawn, but f8 queen, you have to sacrifice your bishop, king to a5, and it is a draw. So this is probably how it could have happened. I'm not sure if both of the players actually saw that far, but yeah, it is kind of easy for them since they are the top players. But I wanted to show you what could have actually happened and how Liren could have gone for the win in this game. So after king to e4, he should have played probably the most natural move that occurs to everybody. Pick up the pawns and push your pawn to a promotion. You will give up your bishop essentially for this pawn. And king to a3 is the best move. But after f5, which is of course the best move for white, you don't go and pick up the pawn, because there is this king to d3, bishop moves to g5, for example, king to c4. Once again, you defend this pawn, and king will come on b5, and it will come on a6 and pick up this pawn. Essentially, you cannot defend with the bishop this pawn and also stop the threat of pushing of this pawn. Sorry. So this is what could have happened. So you shouldn't go for capturing of this pawn immediately, but you have to prepare it. And you prepare it playing like this: bishop to b4. So put the bishop on this diagonal where the pawn will go out. King comes to d5, and now a6. And this is probably the most important move in this situation. And this is what actually Ding should have seen in actually to go for this variation, because now a6 you have this beautiful coordination of the pieces. So this pawn here protecting this square here, and this bishop keeping it on this diagonal, which doesn't allow king to come closer. King plays to c4, and for example bishop to e7, stopping the push of the pawn. And now finally you can actually pick up this pawn, because the king cannot come closer to capture this pawn. We have here now, for example, if f6 is played, then you can just pick up the pawn. Yeah, king to c5. In the end, after a5, this pawn can be defended on c3 or d8, and then you can easily pick up these two pawns. So this isn't an option. For example, if you play something like king to d4, king to a2, and king goes back on c4. There aren't that many things that white can play here, but now it is very important how to continue this. King to a3, and now king to c3. You want to defend this pawn at any cost. And playing bishop to b4 isn't enough. So king to c4, and now if you play something like a5, f6, so essentially white will just continue with the push of the pawn. But you still play bishop to a5, so that the king cannot go back on c3. So he is forced to play f6. Now bishop back to b4 and f7. And this is important. Now you have to force white to actually push this pawn and sacrifice it just because he have to. He doesn't have any other move. So after bishop to e7, king plays to c3, bishop to c5, and after king to c4, you play bishop to b4. Now there is no more king to c3. You have to push the pawn or move the king. If you move the king, king captures on b3 and this pawn is promoted. So this is the only move. You capture it, king to c3, bishop to b4, king to c4, and you can play even a5. In a sense, whatever happens, you will pick up the pawn and win the game. So this is how I wanted to keep this one for the last, and I would say it is the top blunder of the Gashimov Memorial, having such a good chance to beat the other king of the draws with a move such as king to a3. Yeah, but to actually see all of this and see this beautiful move a6, such a silent and deadly move, yeah, it's very difficult. So this is pretty much it. Okay, first of all, I'm really glad that you liked the series, because I also like it a lot. But once again, as I said at the beginning of the video, to actually cover all of this, I have to go through all the games, so it takes time to actually analyze everything and pick up the worst moves actually of such a top tournament. And yeah, I will definitely continue to do it in the future. If you have some other tournament that you would like me to find the worst moves or the top blunders, please definitely suggest that in the comments down below. But other than that, I would like to thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time.